All right. I think we're back after a slightly extended weekend. Just slightly. Yeah. All right. Looks like things are coming up. While we wait on those, how about these earthquakes recently? What is going on? I never expected an earthquake in Florida. And maybe that's just me being naive. There was that huge one in the Philippines, like, what, 7.8 was the revised magnitude? And now there was a 6.1 magnitude off the coast of Cuba today. People all over Florida have been reporting it. I barely noticed it, but I guess that's just due to how far away I was. But people are posting, did you feel an earthquake? It's like, yeah, there was one. There was one. But they felt it a lot more in Cuba, where they have no electricity as is. Couldn't have knocked out the power for them, because they didn't have it anyways. But no, it's been reported in Florida, Cuba, where they have internet currently, Mexico. It was like halfway, not really halfway, but between Cuba and Mexico-ish. I know apparently people have been reporting it around the Gulf Coast area too of Florida. I guess because it's closer there, but apparently as far north as Jacksonville. There's even one up in Georgia on the Atlantic coast. But yeah, earthquakes. Never expected to witness one in Florida. Never did. And here we are. It's like, what is that? I guess we got to be thankful there was no tsunami. I guess that's all, because that thing would have washed this sandbar over. Which, yeah, never would have expected that. We'll hop into it. Here we are. Today is Monday, June 8th, 2026. This is episode number 121 of Addressing the Issues. It's a little unorganized today. I will be quite frank with you all. There's just been a lot to cover over the weekend into today. A little from Friday, not too much, but you have President Trump set to attend Game 3 of the NBA Finals at Madison Square Garden tonight. Apparently people are complaining already about how bad security will be to have the president at the NBA Finals. And it's just like, why isn't security that high anyways? You probably don't want people sneaking weapons into the NBA Finals or any other sporting event for that matter. But people are already complaining. They're like, oh, we can't bring bags. It's like, is the clear bag much better? Truly. It's like, I don't really understand what you all are complaining about. Like, you know, maybe he should be doing other things, but let him have some fun. He doesn't even go golfing anymore. Like, let him at least go back to Madison Square Garden. I saw this clip going around from when he was there before working a camera. I was like, me and Trump had the same job one day. For one day, he did the same job that I have. Sports videography. So shout out President Trump for walking a mile in my shoes. That's what I was doing over the weekend. But this is one day after President Trump's newest lawsuit, which seeks to block the UFC Freedom 250 event from being hosted on June 14th at the White House. This is less than a week before the event is set to take place. the lawsuit cites that this event violates National Park Service regulations and unfairly benefits President Trump and his allies, which is another just baffling complaint. I mean, if you want to complain that, like, you know, it should be on a Saturday, that's fair, but to say, like, hosting something for the 250th anniversary for America is going to violate the National Park Service to benefit his allies is an absurd lawsuit. Like, just based on the fact that they're catering to him as opposed to that he's catering to them. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm kind of upset about it being on a Sunday. Not enough to file the lawsuit, obviously, but it's like, just at this point, people are crazy. Just let it happen. I'm all on board. Let it be on his birthday. Who cares at this point? Who really cares? But violating National Park Service regulations, give me a break. Do you even care about those in the first place? It's like, it'd be different if it was something you actually cared about, but just doing it to spite President Trump is completely absurd. Like, it's typically held on a Saturday. I like watching them on Saturday evenings, but it's also like, I'm not going to file a lawsuit, first of all, and it's not like it's something that I wouldn't regularly care about. Like, if I have a free Saturday, I will watch it. I don't know that these people care that much about the National Park Service regulations, truly. This is just intended to take a jab at President Trump. That's my take on this situation. I mean, what's next? They're going to try and block him from going to Madison Square Garden tonight with a lawsuit. Well, I think you've got about 2 minutes left to file that, so go ahead. Try and get it in time. I'm sure some court somewhere will rule that he's not allowed to go. But I don't know. Court rulings these days are absolutely absurd. It's like, yeah, you can't have fun anymore. The court said so. You can't have your country. The court said so. Completely absurd. We'll go to this one and then go back to the USS Liberty, which is its 59th anniversary. We'll go back to that in a minute. You also have the news that the Trump administration has announced the nation's largest effort to denaturalize U.S. citizens in history. Now, when I hear this, you know, I was hopeful. I was like, so how many 100,000? And then I was like, maybe it's just like tens of thousands. And I was like, but what if it's like millions? And then you read through the article, and it's a whopping 17. I thought we were going to try harder on this. But no, it is 17 U.S. citizens which are accused of immigration fraud. And unfortunately, I don't even think Ilhan Omar's on the list, which is unfortunate. Meaning maybe we can get to 18 one day and it be the largest by one more. But when I read 17, I was just disappointed. I was like, what happened to millions of deportations, and why can't we add a couple million more denaturalizations as well? No chance. You get 17. You get 17 and what? We're still short of 2 million deportations in general. Maybe 17 will break the threshold of 2 million. Doubt it. You know, the promise is we're so hopeful. We're so hopeful for this country. And now, if the DHS gets funding, they may go into New York City this summer, allegedly. Maybe they can find the 10 million there, and 10 million people to deport. I doubt it. I don't even think New York City's population's that high. Could be, though. Just with the surrounding area. Possibly. But it's not the, my and Dan, not, what's his name? What's his name? The XDHS Bavino. What's his first name? Oh man, I'm shortening. It's not mine and Bavino's proposed 100 million. It's quite a few short. Which I think that should be the target number, even if you don't hit it. Dan Bavino, is that correct? It's not Bongino, the disgraced podcast host. It's not that one. The one that said, we need to go after Epstein for forever, and then shows up and says, there's nothing in the Epstein files. Why are you talking about them? And it's like, you know, why not 100 million and a million denaturalizations on top of that? What's wrong with that? Who disagrees? Maybe the left, maybe the people who are here illegally and want them to vote in our elections, maybe that's who would disagree. But I don't think any right-minded person would disagree. Maybe 100 million deportations and 100 million or 1 million denaturalizations. It wouldn't serve us too bad. Maybe you combine the two into 99 million deportations and then 1 million denaturalizations and then deportations. Then we hit the Gregory, that's the one, Gregory Bavino. You are correct. But yeah, and then with 99 million deportations and 1 million, denaturalizations and then deportations, we hit the 100 million deportation mark, and we have a functioning society again. Wouldn't it be beautiful? Wouldn't it just be stellar? I couldn't ask for a better 250th birthday present for my country than that. I couldn't. If you can think of a better one, throw it in the chat, but I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find a better birthday present than 100 million deportations with 1 million denaturalizations. Maybe 10 million denaturalizations. Just start denaturalizing people that were born here that say, I hate America. Just start sending them. Just find an island somewhere. Buy Haiti. Send them there. They can have fun over there. I'm sure they'll enjoy it. Just send them to Cuba. Make Cuba like a penal colony for denaturalized Americans. Not the worst idea. Especially if we're going to try and take over Cuba. Just send them all there. Apparently they have tobacco fields that work. They can create their communist utopia in Cuba like they have done before. Obviously. I think they'd all enjoy that. Denaturalization shouldn't be a priority. There's plenty of illegal aliens to get out of the country. They should both be priorities. They should be much higher on the priority list than going to war in Iran. You can bring the military home and start working on this. Martial law, why not? I know I won't be going anywhere because I'm a patriot. It's that simple. Speaking of patriots, today is the 59th anniversary of the USS Liberty false flag attack by Israel. Today, Thomas Massey went to the House floor and recalled what the survivors claim are the events which happened on June 8th. I believe it was 1967. And he also, after giving the survivors recollection of the events, called for an investigation once more into the USS Liberty incident But I'll read you a little, I guess, somewhat of the timeline of what happened on that day 59 years ago. So the day starts off with surveillance flights by Israel of the USS Liberty. They're flying around the plane, taking pictures of it. Actually, one survivor has said that they were waving to and from because they believed that they were on the same side at the time. So they're waving to and from the plane and the USS Liberty. The plane flies off. Hours later, they are under attack by French Mirage fighter jets. I believe it's for 2 hours straight. They are under bombing, torpedo attacks, napalm attacks, all on the USS Liberty, which is clearly marked with the United States of America flag flying at the top. During this, their signals are jammed, their radars and, antennas are deliberately destroyed, making them unable to call for help. One signal goes through to another ship. The response of the other ship is that Americans are under attack. We are on the way to retaliate. President Lyndon B. Johnson calls back the planes, essentially leaving those sailors on the USS Liberty to sink and die in the Mediterranean Sea. And then for 17 hours, they are left there. Over these 17 hours, they go into, what are they called? The little rescue boats. I don't know what they're called. When your ship's going down, you have the little extra boats on board that you get into. Those are being shot at by Israeli planes as well, attempting to kill the survivors. And then 17 hours later, nothing has happened, as they were left to die in a false flag carried out by the state of Israel. So that's a very rough, brief synopsis of what went on that day. Claimed the lives of 34 U.S. sailors with 171 injuries to others. And what was the response by the U.S.? Absolutely nothing. In fact, the goal of this was to draw the U.S. into the Six-Day War, which Israel launched on Arab countries through this false flag attempt. Now, when you hear this story, it sounds eerily similar to what happens in the Middle East these days, minus the big false flag. Lifeboats, that's the word. Sorry, I was struggling there. There's not much life on the lifeboat when they're getting machine gunned down by airplanes, by what you consider your ally. But like I said, this sounds eerily similar to what's happening in the Middle East currently, where Israel tries to drag us into every conflict alongside them, where we fund them to the tune of $3.8 billion annually. Now, I saw somebody break this down, what this funding is. This is equivalent to sending them $434,000 an hour. That's a ton of money. That's above 99% of Americans' annual salaries per hour. Now, I thought of a great idea of how we could actually reduce spending and, make Americans' lives better. Imagine if we just did one check per day, cut all this funding, and did one check of $434,000 per day to a random American for a whole year. And we've just cut this budget down to 1/24th of what it was. And basically, one American a day wins the lottery. And it's like the best day of their life. They'll be able to buy a new house, a car, maybe even retire. It's like, why wouldn't we just do that instead, as opposed to paying them to drag us into wars? We could just make 365 Americans' lives that much better. One time a day for an entire year. Just keep doing it year after year. I believe people will reap the rewards much more than they do funding a foreign nation, but that's my opinion. It's like, what would you do if you won the daily $434,000 US giveaway? What would you do with it? I feel like my life would just be substantially better with that much money for some reason. But yeah. That's the story of the USS Liberty, which is 59 years old today, with no actual real investigation as to what the events were, aside from, it was some sort of miscommunication between Israel, the United States, the president, the armed forces, and like every node of communication broke down at the same time. It's like, there's a much simpler explanation. They were trying to drag us into the war, much like they successfully did once again with Iran on February 28th of this year. That's your simple explanation. Then we have news over the weekend that Iran fired missiles at Israel as a response for Israel's continued military campaign into southern Lebanon. According to Al Jazeera, Iran's parliament speaker Mohammed Bagher Ghalibaf said Iran will not only halt the path of negotiations, but we will also be in direct confrontation with the enemy. So, negotiations aren't going well. And then you have Vahid Ahmadi, a member of Iran's National Security and Foreign Policy Committee, who said, "We do not have a ceasefire with America. In reality, we are in a pause in the fighting." So I don't know if we won yet. Does this mean we won the war? Or does this mean we have a good deal that will help us? It doesn't sound like it to me. It doesn't really sound like we're on the verge of a deal either, to be frank. And then you have Israel, who retaliated by firing missiles back into central Iran, which included the capital of Tehran. And then after this, or at least sometime in the middle, what I believe is the first time in this entire war that the Houthis have claimed responsibility for an attack, which they claimed responsibility, or at least partial responsibility, for the attacks on Israel. This is before they warned that Israel-affiliated vessels would be unable to transit the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which, if you're unfamiliar, is the critical choke point between Somalia and Yemen of the Red Sea, and therefore by default the Suez Canal, a major international transit way. So, what does that mean exactly? We're probably going to find out, at least we may, what Israel-affiliated vessels are. I can only assume that U.S. vessels will be included in that. And you look back to the Israel-Gaza war, where the same thing was declared, and multiple U.S. ships were sunk by forces in the area in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So, it's only getting bigger, it seems, because I'm pretty sure the Houthis have held off until this point, and now apparently they've joined in, making this an even larger conflict, because somehow it didn't have enough people involved. Now the Houthis want to join. It's like, before long, the Somali pirates will be out there, and we'll have to worry about pirate ships. Not in the traditional sense, but the cheap version out of Somalia. But that is the story of the weekend. Iran has also pledged that they will retaliate on U.S. bases for any Israeli responses, meaning I don't know what tonight looks like, because typically they're pretty true to their word, believe it or not. Now, I can check to see right now if anything's popped off yet, as this is normally the time in which it happens. Let me check one more place. If my computer would work. Iran pledged that they would retaliate against U.S. forces in the region for any retaliation by Israel, which is somewhat alarming, but that is the friends we have entrenched ourselves with. So I haven't seen anything. And then you have the news from this weekend out of the Pentagon that Israel has had its threat level raised to critical, the U.S.'s highest level of threats of espionage, which ties the likes of China and Russia. And apparently, the reason for this is Israel was making strong efforts to surveil top U.S. officials to gain information on President Trump. This information was allegedly regarding whether he will resume strikes on Iran or if he is looking to make a deal. So, this is alongside reports that they bugged the vehicles of Secret Service members with, I guess, audio surveillance equipment, and I guess I'd assume others with the same audio surveillance equipment. And now they are apparently as much of a threat to U.S. intelligence as China and Russia. Yet, for some reason, we continue to send them money and continue to integrate our military with theirs. If you don't recall Section 224 of the National Defense Authorization Act, this should be alarming. They have offices, actually IDF offices within the Pentagon already, as if that isn't enough infiltration. And everybody in Congress essentially has their Israel lobby person who I guess just makes them do whatever Israel wants. And this is reflected in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's letter to a congressman. I believe this was over the weekend. I had it up earlier. I don't know where it went, but we'll find it real quick. I'll read you the letter, because it seems as soon as they lose control of the Pentagon, they go and they say, okay, we'll just control the power of the purse through Congress. So this is from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on June 1st, 2026. He says, "Dear Congressman Stutzman, I was glad to receive your proposed congressional resolution endorsing my plan," says Benjamin Netanyahu, "to shift the framework for U.S.-Israel defense cooperation from aid to partnership. As I said in our meeting in Jerusalem on May 27, 2026, Israel deeply appreciates the financial component of the military aid the United States has generously provided us over the years. The time has now arrived for us to move from aid recipient to partner." The aid wasn't enough. We need control. It continues, "I am heartened by your enthusiastic support for our plan to develop a new memorandum of understanding with the United States government that will draw down U.S. financial military assistance over the next decade and replace it with what you refer to as a new framework of joint defense cooperation, co-development, co-production, and mutual investment in areas including advanced missile defense, artificial intelligence, unmanned systems, cybersecurity, and the next generation in next-generation military platforms. I also appreciate your commitment to fighting the scourge of anti-Semitism in the United States and around the world. Warmest regards, Benjamin Netanyahu. So when you can't control the military anymore, because apparently somehow they wisened up to that, you just go after Congress and you say, you know what, just make it a law that they have to do it. We appreciate your money, but we just want a little bit more. We want to integrate and have you fund the integrated programs, because this isn't a foreign entanglement at all. Who would imagine that having a joint military, at least in research and procurement, much likely more than that in the near future, who would think that that would be a foreign entanglement? I can't imagine anybody would. I can't imagine there's any conflict of interests there. I just can't imagine. That'd be wrong to think. You'd probably be labeled mean names if you thought that having a cooperative military with a foreign nation is a good idea. It's like NATO is bad enough. Do we need like a leech version of NATO? Like just a strict parasite? Probably not. Like NATO's a big enough parasite for the US taxpayers and military. But like, why don't we just do more? Just allow it to happen more and more. The lifeblood sucked out of our taxpayers. Because that's a good idea. That's the news, I guess, regarding this fiasco between the United States, Israel, Iran, and everybody else in the Middle East. That's the current state, including the state from 59 years ago, which nothing's ever changed. It just gets closer and closer to controlling us, which is neat, I guess. You know, if they can't false flag you into doing it, why don't they just do a palace coup of your government? Maybe that's easier. Maybe they pay off everybody, put people on the inside, and control your military. Maybe that's a better idea than a false flag. Just the palace coup of the U.S. military. Not just the executive branch, but let's do it in the legislative too. I mean, not a great idea to get involved with any country this deeply, ever, yet, for some reason. You're evil if you think otherwise. You should probably be put in prison. The people who are doing this should probably be put in prison for forever, for treason. Or at least hung at the steps of the Supreme Court. Maybe that's a more popular solution. Like, you don't commit treason against the U.S. government for a foreign nation. You don't serve another nation before the U.S. It's just a no-brainer. Yet for some reason, it's being allowed. It's just being allowed. But we'll move on from that. We're going to look at some other developing news over the last couple of days. Today, the defense rested its case in the Carmelo Anthony murder trial. It was decided that for some reason in his self-defense case, Carmelo Anthony would not be questioned on the stand. Now, if it was self-defense, I have no idea why you wouldn't tell your side of the story. Yet, all the the jurors heard was other people's accounts of the events of how he was acting in self-defense, which this should be a quick verdict tomorrow. But they'll begin with closing statements tomorrow, and then deliberations will begin afterwards. If this takes longer than 10 minutes, we have a problem in our judicial system. Like, this is an open and shut case. Really, I mean, this should be very quick tomorrow. Now, what do you expect the punishment to be once he's charged for murder? Will it be the death penalty? Probably not. He will probably be fed and housed in U.S. prison, in the U.S. prison system until he dies of old age. Or maybe, they'll say, you were a kid when you did it. You were just a high schooler. Here's 20 years, a slap on the wrist, and try not to do it again. It wasn't fun for everybody last time. It wasn't fun for Austin Metcalf, but just try not to do that to anybody else again. But yeah, that's happening today. I guess that happened today. Tomorrow will be closing statement and then deliberation. Then you also have the news of outside the courthouse. You have the people protesting this poor innocent man based on his race, obviously. You have the Black Panthers showing up for some reason. All two of them, actually. All two Black Panthers left in America after body cam footage came out, showed up in support of Carmelo Anthony. And you have the other people yelling about how he's only being charged with this because he is black. And I'm sitting here watching the reports, questioning. I go, what happened? What happened to when Martin Luther King Jr. said, one day we will not judge men on the color of their skin, but the content of their character. And that's exactly what's not happening here. We're judging people. Black people are judging people by the color of their skin instead of the content of their character. And you get labeled the racist. Believe it or not. No, he's a murderer. That's what he's being judged upon. It doesn't matter if he was white, black, tan, purple, or green. When you kill somebody like that, it's murder. It just is. You're being judged on the content of your character, a murderer, not the color of your skin. That is a non-factor when you're a murderer. I hate to break it to everybody. Whether a defendant testifies or not is always a decision of the defendant in consultation with his counsel. I wouldn't put a 17-year-old on the stand no matter how innocent. He's not innocent. I think everything so far has proven that. Now, will he be let off the hook for being 17 years old? Probably. He'll be sentenced lightly, and he probably should face the death penalty, my opinion. However, I highly doubt that would ever happen because he's 17. But why would you be treated on the content of your character? If you are a murderer, you are a murderer, and you should be treated as any other murderer. Pretty simple. But I don't know. If you're claiming self-defense and you're not willing to represent your own self-defense case, you would instead put it on everybody else surrounding you. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, if you really thought you were innocent, you'd go up there and say, it was self-defense, I had to. He was going to kill me. Yet none of the signs point to that. In fact, it shows that Carmelo Anthony was the aggressor in the situation. And then that, by default, throws out any claim you have that this is self-defense when you are, in fact, the aggressor. There's no longer self-defense to protect you. You are the aggressor. You are the attacker in the situation, which he was. He's now a murderer. I guess not yet until tomorrow, after probably 10 minutes of deliberation, maybe 15. They're feeling really, really liberal that day. But we'll move on from that. Figured that was big news being covered right now. Catch everybody up to speed with what was going on in that case. Not just on the inside of the courtroom, but what was happening outside, because it's just a mess. It's a mess. The people who are arguing that Martin Luther King would never stand for this obviously never listened to what he said. Because the content of his character is evil. You're only there because, well, you think he's being unjustly punished because of his skin color, which is absolutely untrue. If it was the other way around, the kid would have already been electrocuted in Texas. He would have been in the chair. They would have got the firing squad out for the first time in state history and blasted him. If it was the other way around, of course. Well, we'll move on from that tragic story. Just absolute tragedy that would ever happen at a track meet, a high school track meet in the U.S. Yet it does, because of the mentality of those that were there protesting. That mentality gets you those results. And we're reaping the benefits here in America. Just reaping them. I mean, hand over fist, so many benefits. We'll move on. They're still counting the Los Angeles mayor race. And it looks a little fishy. I don't think anybody can deny it, unless you're CNN, which they did, as the mail-in ballots continued to be counted, and Nithya Raman edged past Spencer Pratt over the weekend. Now, if I'm not mistaken, it would be a week ago tomorrow that the election was, and they still haven't figured out how to count one city's worth of votes, which is beyond bizarre. Especially when you have the completely stellar Smartmatic voting machines, which were imported from Venezuela through a company called Smartmatic USA, which never rigged an election in Venezuela in human history. Had to throw that in there. When you have these high-tech machines, I can't imagine that it would take so long to count up all these votes. When you have a democracy, I can't imagine that you would have mail-in ballots anyways, when you can just go to the poll location. They're conveniently located within your community, and they're open all election day, so you can just go in and vote. And you could do it even on a paper ballot there too, and be like third world Peru, who counted all of their votes within a day, and they're all paper ballots. Believe it or not, Peru can do it. If Peru can do it, so can you. Los Angeles, America. It's absolutely unbelievable that somehow third world countries are better at democracy than us. I thought we were democracy builders around the world. Obviously not. But the mail-in ballots continue to come in. Spencer Pratt gets passed basically just barely under a week after the election by the socialist who's running as well. Los Angeles method of primary, or I guess California's method of primary elections is bizarre in the first place, but there are sources now reporting that Democrat NGOs were registering the homeless on Skid Row to vote via absentee ballot with fake addresses, which really reminds me of the story released by O'Keefe Media Group, in which they were in LA, once again, these Democrat NGOs, using the homeless, once again, to sign ballot petitions for money, a couple of dollars, which the homeless would then go use to buy drugs, and the Democrats would use to promote their agenda. And it's like, why does this keep happening? And it's obviously because California is beyond corrupt and basically a failed state at this point, in the truest sense. It is being held by strongmen, Democrat politicians to promote their own policies and further them. And as a result, you get elections which they don't think they're going to be counted even a week after in one city. Just beyond bizarre. You have the obligatory Truth Social post from our president, Donald J. Trump, as he puts at the end of all of these. Truth Social, sponsor me. I'm waiting on that Trump money. But he says, not possible for Spencer Pratt to have lost the LA runoffs after the big lead he had. Third world nation, rigged elections. Now they'll be working on great guy Steve Hilton. Won't have results for possibly 2 weeks, according to officials. President DJT. Well, apparently he said what we're all thinking. It's like, yes, this is like, well, actually, the third world can count votes faster than you all, and you have apparently these modern machines. It's like, what's going wrong here? Maybe the SAVE Act would help out a little bit. Maybe we just get rid of mail-in ballots for people who literally live across the street from the polling station. Like maybe just show up to the polls and write on paper ballots and count them in a day, and then we have results, and nobody has to worry about this anymore. Nobody has to worry about it anymore. Like there would be no more conspiracy theories that elections were being stolen if you could just watch people count the paper ballots. And, this stack has quite a few more pieces of paper in it than the other stack, so this person wins. It's not a difficult concept. And that way, everybody comes in, you check their ID, which is another thing we need to do here. You can check their ID, make sure they're a resident, and then from there, they vote. They write on a piece of paper, turn it in. So at the end of the day, people count, and then less than 24 hours later, possibly even in the same night, you'd get a result. What a novel concept. I'm going to propose this for the future of America, that we're going to have paper and people are going to count the pieces of paper. What a modern idea. It's almost like how the Greeks intended when they created democracy. Except for they were throwing stones in bowls or something. It's a little primitive. We have paper now and pens, ballpoint pens, modern innovation. Believe it or not. You don't even have to dip the quill in the bowl of ink anymore. You can just write with a pen. It's real neat stuff we've developed here. And then you have, I guess I'll preface this, more primary elections tomorrow. The big one being everyone's favorite Disney World wanderer with a princess wand and war endorser, Lindsey Graham, trying to be reelected back into Senate because he has helped Americans so much over the years, particularly those in South Carolina, that he deserves to be reelected. Not really, but President Trump believes so. Another great Truth Social post, sponsor me. This stream is not sponsored officially by Truth Social, but it is in my heart. It says, Senator Lindsey Graham is working incredibly hard for the great people of South Carolina, a state I love and won big in 2016, 2020, and 2024. Lindsey has been a wonderful friend and has always been there when I needed him. As the chair of the Senate Budget Committee, Lindsey is fighting tirelessly to grow the economy, lower taxes, cut regulations, and eliminate government waste. Lindsey is also relentlessly focused on helping us keep our border secure, stop migrant crime, strongly support our military and veterans, unleash American energy dominance, promote Made in the USA, safeguard our elections, defend our always under siege Second Amendment, and ensure peace through strength. Lindsey Graham has my complete and total endorsement for re-election. Election day is Tuesday, June 9th. Get out and vote for Lindsey. He will never let you down. Find your voting location here at Swamp the Vote USA, South Carolina. Why? Like, if you are in South Carolina, get out tomorrow. And you're registered to vote, of course. I don't want anybody committing voter fraud, obviously. If you're in South Carolina, registered to vote in the Republican primary election, get out and don't vote for Lindsey Graham. There's actually a much better, much more America First candidate, Mark Lynch, who I hope wins. That's my endorsement. Because I would never endorse warmonger Lindsey Graham, the neocon. Warmonger Lindsey Graham, the neocon. That sounds like some villain in a movie. But no, he's actually a U.S. senator, believe it or not. Maybe he should change his name to that. If he does, I want royalties. Senator Warmonger Lindsey Graham, the neocon. I like that idea. And it's like, you know, Mark Lynch at least, like, has been married, has a family, I do believe. Unlike the alternative, which wants to send your sons and daughters to fight for Israel against Iran, yet has no sons nor daughters of his own because he's never been married. Because that is who exactly you would want to make decisions for your sons and daughters, is someone who has none. Genius. Genius, genius, genius. It's like nobody comes up to me and asks me for parenting advice. Probably because I have no kids. Nobody should be asking you to send your sons and daughters to fight a war he supports if he has no sons or daughters of his own. It's that simple. Maybe said person should just go back to Disney World and chase around children with a princess wand. Maybe that is a much more suitable career path for said person. No, get out tomorrow and vote. Lots of primary elections. I have a list pulled up here. You have Maine for U.S. Senate, House, state legislature, and other offices. That's the one where that Graham Plattner dude's running. What a psycho. Used to be a Nazi, but hates him now. It's like, what happened? What caused your fallout with the Nazis, Graham? What happened there? And you have Nevada, which has the U.S. Senate, U.S. House, and state offices. North Dakota, primary for federal and state offices. South Carolina, primary for U.S. Senate, U.S. House, and state offices. But yeah, those are the primaries tomorrow. If your state is holding a primary, get out there and probably don't vote for the incumbent unless you have some explanation of how they have made your life better over their last term. If you cannot think of something, maybe it's the best idea to vote for somebody else. It's really that simple. Do not have Stockholm Syndrome at the primary elections, because it is running our country into the ground, truly. It's like I'd like to one day have children, but it's rather unaffordable at this point. Maybe if one of these pro-life people, the pro-life champions, could figure out how to make it to where you could actually give birth to a kid and raise it in a prosperous household, if they have solutions for that, maybe they deserve to be reelected. But until then, maybe the private sector is best for them. Maybe. Maybe being a public servant shouldn't be your job if you're not. Oh, great. We'll be right back. This might be the... You know what? We'll go with this for the rest. We only have the good news right after this. Maybe being a public servant shouldn't be your job if you're not willing to serve the public. That'll be the end. Make sure you guys are dropping a like on this episode, sharing, telling people to get out and vote. Probably not for their incumbent tomorrow. Maybe saying, you know, maybe we could use some new blood in office. They're not really doing well for us. Maybe. Also, maybe consider subscribing, following on Kick and Rumble, subscribing on YouTube. Really appreciate that. Mostly appreciate you guys who come by every day, hang out till the end. Really helps me out with the algorithm. But yeah, make sure you guys are also dropping a like. I don't even know if I said that. But most importantly, get out tomorrow if you have a primary election and do your part in returning the people to power of this country, as opposed to these career politicians who refuse to represent you as a constituent and just seek to send your sons and daughters to fight for a war which their sons and daughters could never be sent to because they don't have any. So get out to your primary tomorrow. I'll remind you tomorrow at the beginning of the show. But maybe you could just get it done first thing in the morning and show up to the ballot box and cast your vote in person without a mail-in ballot. How fantastic of an idea is that? Hopefully they make you show an ID. Hopefully they will make you show an ID the vote tomorrow. Wouldn't that be awesome? Well, we're going to get to the good news. Today we're looking at Matthew chapter 9, verses 1 through 13, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, 1 through 13. It says, Jesus stepped into a boat, crossed over, and came to his own town. Some men brought him a paralytic, lying on a mat. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Take heart, son, your sins are forgiven." At this, some of the teachers of the law said to themselves, "This fellow is blaspheming." Knowing their thoughts, Jesus said, "Why do you entertain evil thoughts in your hearts? Which is easier to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Get up and walk'? But so that you may know that the Son of Man has the authority on earth to forgive sins." Then he said to the paralytic, "Get up and take your mat and go home." And the man got up and went home. When the crowd saw this, they were filled with awe, and they praised God, who had given such authority to men. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector booth. "Follow me," he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." Now there's two different stories here, albeit interlinked. Gotta keep forgetting that's the only camera that's working right now. But Jesus is given this moment where he has the choice of either healing the paralytic or freeing him of his sins. And first of all, he chooses to first, at least, because he does both, he chooses the first, free the man of his sins. And for some reason, that this forgiveness is shunned when they think that he should be healing the man. Now, I think one of these is way more important than the other, because you can't get up and walk to heaven, believe it or not. It's not going to work. Now, if you ask Jesus for forgiveness of your sins, you're much more likely than being able to just get up and walk, which is a miracle. He performs a miracle of its truest extent, healing a paralytic. But he realizes this isn't the main issue of the man. The main issue is that he's a sinner first and foremost. Beyond that is his physical disability. And I think it ties really well into the next story where he's eating dinner with the tax collectors and sinners. And Jesus says, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." Meaning we have a much deeper problem internally, any human on earth, than our physical disabilities, and that is our sin. Our sin is what will prevent us from heaven. It's what actually holds us back more than any physical disability, because we're being held back from a forever with God, a forever with Jesus Christ. That our physical disabilities will never hold us back as much as sin will. But it's really interesting. I mean, it's really true, but also very interesting that Jesus would decide to heal his soul prior to healing his physical disabilities. And we in this day and age need a lot of healing on our souls. And there's one way to truly heal your soul. And that's through following Jesus, dedicating your life to Jesus. That is how you will heal your soul. You're not going to fix this with any physical attribute. You can get as fit as you want to, have the best diet, but if your soul is corrupted, you will not see a heaven. You can be the world's strongest man, the best ultra marathon runner the world's ever seen, but that will never heal your soul. What will heal your soul is accepting Jesus into your life, confessing your sins, asking for forgiveness for them, and devoting your life to pursuing these values of Jesus, to further his kingdom, to believe that he died on the cross for your sins so that you could be forgiven for them. And that is a much bigger hurdle. It is the only hurdle to heaven, to a forever. That is the hurdle, is sins. It's not a physical disability. Because even the paralytic could believe. And from there, he was healed of his sins. And then afterwards was healed of his physical disabilities to prove the miracle. But I feel like sometimes we're way too worried about what physically holds us back as opposed to what holds back our soul, which is sin. And I think if we would address the issues within our soul as a human collective, we would all do it, we'd have much less issues physically. And I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, but you can think about it as an example. If you didn't beat your neighbor and cut off his arm because you're angry at him and you want to sin, you wouldn't have that issue. If you healed your soul first, you never would have attacked your neighbor, and he would never have the physical issue. I don't know if that makes sense at all. But if we all heal our souls, we'll have much less problem with everything else on this earth. Whether it be physical issues, money, living conditions, whatever it is, whatever you can think of. The first step is healing your sin, healing your soul, asking for forgiveness, and from there, we can take more steps. Take more steps as the human populace. But yeah, I think that's all we have for today. I'll check really quickly to see if there's anything else. I think I talked about ICE planning on surging New York City. If I didn't talk about it enough, I'll figure it out tomorrow. Let's see. We'll check one more time here. Yeah, Greg Bovino is actually considering a presidential run, apparently, which, may be the best option. Maybe the best option at this point. 100 million and a million denaturalizations, and you have my vote. I think he actually might be doing it. Apparently he's already started releasing graphics. Interesting development there. Maybe we'll look at that tomorrow. Maybe not. Depends on how the day is going. Oh, here we go. Hezbollah drone set off sirens in Israel. So it might be happening tonight once again, because the ceasefire is so strong. It's the strongest ceasefire anybody's ever seen. But yeah, we're just going to wrap it up here. Make sure you guys are dropping a like, following, subscribing, sharing the channel, sharing the episode. Mostly, thank you all for watching. Really appreciate you guys that come in every day, stick around till the end. It's really awesome to see. But yeah, I should be back tomorrow. Don't see anything that's going to prevent that. I still have to record, hopefully, a guest episode for this weekend at some point during the week. I have a little bit of travel for that, so I may need to take a day off, but it probably won't be tomorrow. So if you're worried about that, don't be too worried. We'll figure it out. But yeah, I think I'll sign off here and just hop right back into it tomorrow. To all my people on the East Coast, I hope you get home safe. To my people further west, I hope you finish up your workday strong and get home safe as well. I'll talk to you guys very, very soon.